McLaren in Bahrain had a strange weekend. Overall feeling within the team was massively positive going away from the race after they got their first ever win in Bahrain in front of their Bahraini owners. Zak Brown was his usual self, massively excited and acting as if he won the lottery, and Oscar was also his usual self and seemed just as excited to win the race as he did spinning off in Australia. The team brought home a double podium with a 1-3, extending their lead in the Constructors' Championship over Mercedes, but underneath the positivity, it's impossible to ignore the strange weekend of Lando Norris. On the surface, recovering to P3 after starting in P6 is not exactly a terrible weekend, but the way he got there and the numerous mistakes that he made along the way is what really sets off alarm bells. Oscar looked to have the edge over Lando all the way from the beginning of practice. In the warmer temperatures during FP3, which really suited McLaren, Piastri was a ridiculous 0.6 quicker than Lando and 0.8 quicker than Leclerc. In the cooler conditions of qualifying and the race, however, it tilted the balance of performance back a little bit more in favour of Mercedes, closing the field up. Even then, Oscar set a commanding pole position and controlled the race completely with absolutely no drama. When you consider that he was 7.5 seconds ahead of Russell before the safety car, and then finished the race with a 15.5 second gap, that means that Piastri basically dominated this Grand Prix with a 23 second margin over everybody else. This almost needs to go unsaid, but there is absolutely no doubt that Piastri is a genuine title contender, and I think now, in the eyes of many, he is probably the title favourite. Despite McLaren's dominance, Lando by his own admission was struggling from practice, and again, although P3 on paper doesn't look that terrible, his weekend and just his general demeanour, only 4 races into the season, were really worrying. In qualifying, he underperformed, qualifying down in 6th, behind the Mercedes, the Ferrari and also the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. Before the race even started, he got a 5-second penalty for going beyond his grid box at the start, which he called an incredibly stupid mistake, and that meant that he was always going to have to work his way through the field and overtake a lot of other cars, which, to his credit, amazingly he had a great start jumping from 6th to 3rd on the opening lap. However, after serving his penalty and after the safety car restart, despite having a tyre and performance advantage over the likes of Leclerc and Russell, he was very unconvincing in wheel-to-wheel combat with lockups into turn 1 and poor decision making with where to place his car, especially for turn 4, which turned out to be the best corner for overtaking if you could set your car up the right way through turns 1 and turn 2. The sum total to all of that is that Lando's final result actually kind of flatters his performance. Lando's biggest problem is that the MCL39 just doesn't suit the way that he likes to drive. McLaren in cooler conditions struggles a little bit more with getting its front tyres up to temperature. However, in warmer conditions and during the race, this results in better tyre wear with less thermal degradation. Lando likes to attack corner entries, riding the brakes very hard and very late into the corner, and sometimes even launching his car over the curb. As long as there's enough load over the front end, he can use that to carry the speed through the corner and basically deal with any instability on corner exits. McLaren have found performance and have developed the MCL39 to have a lot more of a neutral balance. Watching Oscar's pole lap, his inputs are buttery smooth going into the corner, but that allows him to get onto the power very early on corner exit, which is where he was able to gain the most amount of time. Essentially, there is a clash in how Lando likes to find time, which is on corner entry with a very front-loaded aero balance, and how the car needs to be driven to get the most performance out of it, which is a lot more neutral going into the corner, but then getting onto the throttle a lot earlier. The difficulty is that if he doesn't brake late enough and takes it too easy going into the corner, then all he's going to be doing is bleeding lap time, but when he's trying to push, he just can't rotate the car the way that he likes, and that's then leading to mid-corner understeer or even late corner oversteer when he's overdriving. Lando has talked very openly after Australia, after China, and now during the Bahrain weekend that whilst the team will always chase peak performance, and clearly McLaren have more usable downforce and better tyre wear than any other team, when the balance goes away from the front end, which is what he likes, it makes the car more unstable to drive going into the corners, especially when he's pushing in qualifying, when you're trying to chase those last few tenths, which are the most difficult to find. Speaking about his difficulties with the car earlier in the season, Lando said, It doesn't suit me in terms of me wanting to push the entries and push the braking. It's very weak from that point of view. So not what I like, but at the same time, some of it is down to the adaptation of needing to change a little bit my driving styles every year. The car I drive this year is very different to what a McLaren was a few years ago, clearly, because we were at the back and now we're at the front. If you do want a bit more front end at mid-corner, at the minute we can only get that if we compromise the low speed or high speed performance or wind conditions. There is just so many compromises you've got to make. And now this has been going on since Lando first drove the car during pre-season testing, but in Bahrain, what stood out was Lando's demeanor. After qualifying, he was so down and so self-deprecating, it was almost uncomfortable to watch his interviews. His voice was really quiet, his answers were very short, and when he did speak, he made comments like, "It feels like I've never driven a Formula 1 car before." Now, drivers are always going to be their own worst critics, and Lando's demeanor reminded me a lot of when Leclerc used to make mistakes and how self-critical he was. However, with Lando, I honestly feel like sometimes he's too hard on himself and that he struggles to get over the disappointment a lot quicker than he should. Even when Oscar is frustrated, he gives absolutely nothing away when it comes to the mental side, and that makes him a lot more stable and a lot more consistent, regardless of if he's winning or if he's losing. When it comes to Lando, it's difficult to judge a driver and say that he should hide his emotions, but I do think that Lando needs someone to help him cope with the disappointment a little bit better, because his competition can latch onto that kind of mental weakness and use it as a strength. Lando should always be himself and not pretend to be something he's not, because being yourself gives you confidence as a person, which ultimately puts you into a better frame of mind to perform when you're in the car. But he's also got to balance to not be too negative on himself, because unlike with drivers like a Leclerc or a Hamilton, those drivers are able to compartmentalize that negativity a lot better and not let it affect them when it comes to the Grand Prix. And now, regardless of how bad things got in Bahrain, Lando has got to take the positives even out of a bad weekend, and I hope the people around him are reassuring him in the right way. He is still the leader of the championship, he is still driving the best car on the grid, and he is still immensely talented and capable of winning this world championship. Given how much Oscar has improved, and some might even argue that he's even beginning to supersede Lando at McLaren, Lando has got to prioritize working with the team either on the development side or on the setup side to get the MCL39 more towards that balance that he wants to win races. This fight for supremacy and ultimate control of McLaren between Oscar and Lando is what's going to define the early part of this season, and unless Lando begins to change something with the car and with himself mentally, Oscar is just going to continue to feed off that weakness and continue to press his advantage with the momentum that he is building. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.